Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Before we start into today's class, I would really quick like to announce the people who got the trivia question correct, as well as what the answer was. So for those of you who don't know, there is a trivia question every week now on my website. You can go ahead and go over there to answer if you'd like to participate and have some fun. I did post also the people who got it right and the answer below the question, so for last week. So if you want to double check or want to see something, it's going to be on there as well. I did update to the new questions, so this next week's question is up and ready for you to go ahead and see if you know the answer to, if you would like to do that. Last week's question had a partial book cover, and it was, what book is this? We had 5 people who got it right, and they are Paul, Kathy, Troy, Brendan, and Amanda. So thank you to everybody who participated and answered the question, and congratulations to those of you who got it right. You guys are good, and we will see if you guys can know what the next answer is. I'd be happy to see what your responses are. Alright, so let's go ahead and just jump straight into today's class. I have a whole lot to talk about. There is just so many things that happen in these 5 chapters that I really would like to talk about and think are important to talk about. So let's go ahead and just jump right in with our recap, as always. So we start off with Lily examining Carlos Fuentes' crime scene and looking over what has happened. Based on the evidence and her own abilities, she comes to the conclusion that he was killed by a werewolf, or Lupi, in his wolf form, or a lupus in his wolf form. She investigates the crime scene. She investigates what she can tell going away from the crime scene, so she examines everything that she can before going to Club Hell to talk to Carlos's wife and Rule Turner, who is a very well-known lupus. And so she is able to talk to Rule there, talk to some of the people that are in the booth with him, and lets his wife know that her husband has died. Rule then calls his dad and lets him know about what's going on with the situation with the police and how he might be suspected to be, how he is suspected to be involved, possibly, and the developments going on with that. And then Lily, the next day, meets with her captain and discovers that the FBI is going to be involved with the case. They're not taking the case from her, but they are going to be involved in the case and checking in with her progress. As well as in the same morning, she also schedules a lunch with Rule to, he says that he wants to give help to her in her investigation and give her some more inside knowledge. And so after she does all of that, gets going on her case, talks about the case with her captain, she leaves to visit her grandmother and discusses what is happening with Rule and the fact that when she touches him, she didn't feel any of his magic, which is unheard of for her, being a sensitive. And her grandmother seems to think that it is also a big deal and is going to see if she can find out the answer. So, in the scheme of the recap here, we don't have tons of events happening other than basic setup. But this basic setup, I find that Eileen Wilks has a whole bunch of stuff going on in just a small amount of space in the book. So let's first talk about point of view, because point of view is always very important. It's obviously the lens that we see the story through, so it is always present, it's always there, and it's always doing something to the story for us. So we do see within these first 5 chapters that it is third-person limited, switching between Lily and Rule. So the difference between this being like omniscient versus limited is that we are limited to the fact that we are seeing Lily or we are seeing Rule at one time. And the narrator, though, is not first person, it is a third person, but they are only talking about the character that they're following. perspective and thoughts and feelings on the matter. So we don't get, for example, when Lily's talking to Rule, we don't get Rule's thoughts about Lily or what's happening or anything like that. We don't get those until we switch over to Rule's third person point of view section. And when we are Rule, we don't get Cullen, or we don't get Lily's, or we don't get anybody else's perspective on things. The narrator is specifically talking from the perspective of knowing what the one character knows at that particular time. So even though we do switch between the two characters and get a little bit of insight to both of them based on at least these first 5 chapters, we have mostly Lily, but we had a little bit of Rule in there. So we got a little bit of both perspectives, but we only get one perspective at a time, which is why it is third person limited. And this narrator is very close to the character. We actually feel like the narrator is embodying the character in many ways and speaking like the character would, really close to the character. Instead of feeling like, hey, we have a narrator who is narrating this, we feel more like we're really close, in depth, seeing the character without actually being a first person point of view, if that makes sense. So I think it's a very interesting choice to make, especially with it being flipped between 2 different characters at this point, to be third person and to be so close to them versus more of a pulled back view, being able to see more of the picture. But it also allows us to see things but also not know everything all at once. So without having the knowledge of everybody, we just have the knowledge of Lily and being very close to Lily when we are under her perspective. We don't understand everything that is going on with Rule and how things work. So we are uncovering things more slowly. We are uncovering more of a mystery in the fact that we are seeing it from a perspective that is only Lily, so Lily only knows certain things. And when we jump to Rule, Rule only knows certain things. So we don't have the narrator telling us everything that we might need to know right off the bat. We just have it close and personal with the characters, so we still have that mystery and we still have to go through and see what's going to happen just like the characters do. So let's talk about Lily. Since we have seen mostly from following her perspective around so far, let's go ahead and talk about her. And since it seems like we're gonna have her a lot of the time, we don't know for certain since we only are 5 chapters in, but it seems like we are really focusing on her at this moment, and she is an important character in the fact that she is the detective on this case. So it's important to see where we're gonna go with her. So first thing that we really learn about her is that she is a sensitive, which means that she can feel magic by touching it. Like she touches the corpse or just try and see if there is any magic, and she ends up touching that hair. That gives her that feeling of magic. And she touches the owner of Club Hell and can tell that he is a gnome. So we see that she has this ability that we don't really know how open she is about this ability, how many people know that this is about her. It does mention that in the police force there is a don't say, don't show, don't tell, they don't care as long as they don't know about it. So it seems like she's not super open about it, but she's not like doesn't tell anybody at all, and the fact that her captain knows and things like that. So we at least now know that, and we know that this is going to help her with this case. She is a homicide detective, and we do know that she is pretty young for a detective, since she had mentioned that some of the other beat cops that were helping her out were possibly mad that she got to be a detective, and they are so much older than her and still are not in a more higher role than they are at the moment. She does seem to be a very strict, confident type personality. Not saying strict as in a bad way, just, she plays by the rules. She's very confident. She's very much, hey, take charge of matters kind of deal. And she's very much wanting her crime scene at least to be uncontaminated. So she's very strict with the other cops about being too close and possibly contaminating evidence. She seems to be very, very smart, really knows what she's doing, very knowledgeable about the paranormal things happening in the world, you know, the different cases that have happened, different things that are going on with the paranormal community and how that is affecting politics, how that is affecting her job, how that is affecting other people, understanding, you know, the conflicts that normal people have with the paranormal people, lots of prejudice that's going on. I don't really feel at this point that we see any prejudice from her, more just acknowledgement of the situation. And obviously with her being a sensitive, it does make sense that she would be more open to those other types of people, other types of abilities. We do know some kind of magic there at the end with her grandmother. Her grandmother's touch is magic of some sort. We don't know how her grandmother is magical, but obviously it's close to home, and it might even be how she got her powers or abilities might be hereditary. We don't know at this point. We don't have quite enough information to be able to understand that or not. But she's doesn't seem to be prejudiced at all. Obviously she is in that particular community herself, so she's much more understanding than some of the other cops might be. And it definitely shows that some of the other cops are so happy to pin it on a lupus and to be in that mode of like, oh hey, let's find out which lupus this is and arrest them, or just arrest them all if you don't mind. We do have that one cop that goes with her to actually Club Hell, and she asks him, hey, are you going to be a problem to go in here and be talking to Lupi and things like that? She is a little shocked that he takes so long to answer her, but he is somebody who obviously has possibly some kind of prejudice against them or has thoughts and feelings about them, and he had to actually think if it would affect him doing his job and interviewing and talking to these Lupi. So it is very much that the paranormals are in this world and there is a lot of prejudice, a lot of problems, but she is not seeming to be one of those people. Now let's go ahead and talk about Rule, since he is the main suspect here in in Lily's case. So obviously it's already setting up with the whole fact that she's having this lunch date with him and everything like that he is going to be at least an important part of this novel. We don't know quite yet if this is going to be somebody who's important to her throughout the series or where the series is going to go. But we do know, at least for this one, that we are going to continue seeing him in the future chapters, since we've already set up this lunch date that we have not gotten to yet. And obviously because he is the main suspect as well. So we find out that he has a son. Obviously he is a lupus, so he is a werewolf, and we don't know enough about his relationship with being a werewolf or anything like that, but except for the fact that he is the second in command, or the prince of Nokolai, as everybody likes to call him. So second in command of his clan, or aka prince of his clan. So we do know that he has high status in his particular group of werewolves, and so we're going to see how that affects things and where that leads us. He is a ladies' man. That has been put right up in front, is that he sleeps around, he sleeps with everybody, he flirts with all women. Lily is not super happy about that, doesn't really approve, but that is the case. He's not very picky between married or unmarried. It seems that in the fact that he is with Carlos Fuentes' wife, and they do have a relationship as well. So he's kind of not what you would say a regular upstanding citizen would be. He is more of a nightlife, sleeping around kind of guy at this point. At least that's the way that we are receiving his projection of himself. We don't actually know much details on if he actually sleeps with everybody or if this is just a reputation. We will have to find out about that. It does seem to be, though, highly likely that he is that way and that he at least has had a relationship with Carlos Fuentes' wife. So obviously being married doesn't bother him. He's still overall pretty mysterious at this point. We really don't know tons about him other than what his public image is and the few things that we get when Lily interacts with him in the club, and when we have that little chapter that is from his following his perspective, calling his dad and talking with Cullen and the owner of Club Hell. Overall, it's not, the best picture to have of him to start off with. I mean, the fact that he's sleeping around, that he's really famous in the media, that he's kind of a go-lucky prince of this werewolf clan. But at the same time, we see that there are hidden depths in the fact that he does have a son that obviously he checks in on, and he does have this relationship with his dad that seems to be more serious, and that he is more serious than he lets on. And we are going to see as we progress through the book how he progresses and how we come to see who he truly is, if that really is the persona that he comes across, if that is real or if that is fake and just media that Lily is being fed from, like he was feeding everybody else, to have some kind of public persona about him. I'd like to know if you haven't read the book and you are a first-time reader of it, what you think, if you believe that his persona is real or if you think that it is fake. And let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about Rule and Lily, both of them, and what your first impressions of them are. Let's go ahead and talk about world building. We are being built this world very, very quickly. Now, of course, it is an urban fantasy, so we already know the regular Earth aspects of, the world, the basic parameters that the world works with. But we have so many things that are being defined and built, and so many of the paranormal things that are being incorporated into our understanding of what this Earth in particular is capable of and what it has and what it's gone through. And Eileen Wilks really, really, really puts things in quickly and just starts building this world, adding things in. And so I have a whole lot on this topic to talk about. So let's first start with the fact that we are in San Diego. So we are in California, we are in San Diego, so we do have a specific place that people, at least for this Earth, is familiar with and what it should and should not possibly have in it at this point. So we have a baseline of it being San Diego. We find out that there is a magical crime division, which is an FBI sector. So those FBI agents that come in are specifically for magical crimes, and they are the ones that deal with that particular set of problems. So as we can see, we are building all this as we're going, and there's more points that I will have that makes towards this statement. But clearly, all the way from the very beginning, when we first see Lily at the body and everything like that, we find out that the paranormal is known. Everybody knows about it, everybody understands that it exists, and that they are trying to work still on integrating together. So we don't know an exact timeline of like when the paranormals came out into the forefront, but we do know it's been a while, and we do know that there are now trying to be laws in place, that there are trying to work with people who have prejudice against them, and that even though things are not perfect and we are still in the society building a better working relationship between humans and non-humans, that they are known. There is actual, government agencies that are about, learning about these things and being in charge of paranormal side of things. And though things are not perfect, it is out in the open. They're out there, and everybody knows. So it is definitely an interesting perspective, considering a lot of urban fantasies, or a lot of fantasies that are placed in our world with magical elements, do usually have those magical elements still being hidden, because I'm guessing because in our Earth we don't have magic, or we don't believe in magic, so they like to have that, oh, you don't know about it, it's really there but it's hidden kind of feel. This one is just downright like everybody knows. The whole secret was blown. So let's go ahead and talk as we get further down to what that has affected, how that has affected this world in particular, this version of Earth with this version of the paranormal. So FBI now has a sector for that kind of division of crimes. And we learn about some of the history about, the paranormals and the Earth and regular humans trying to work together and discovering each other and trying to work together. So the history is that the Earth as we know it, the world as we know it, has been affected obviously by knowing about these paranormals and knowing about the magical world. We have a couple mentions of past events that deal with magical beings. We have like those cases that the comes in with the FBI agents. She mentions those couple of cases that dealt with werewolves and how those turned out. And we now know that there are laws that have been put into place, or bills that are trying to be turned into laws that are for specifically the paranormal people in this world. There's the species citizenship bill that they are trying so desperately to get passed in order to have more equality and for paranormals to have more rights. So obviously the Lupi are the ones that we are so far focusing on. We do know a couple other types of creatures that are in this world, but the Lupi at this point are the main focus, and they really want to have this bill passed because that will help them out and give them more rights. So we do know that there are laws that are now in place also that make it so that way in human form, a lupus is considered human, not a lupus, and you cannot just shoot and kill somebody who you know is a werewolf in human form. Now in wolf form still at this moment, without the citizenship bill, there is no stopping anybody from killing you if they want to. The only exception were those two cases that they found that were exceptions for why the lupus in particular changed into a wolf for self-defense and such. So that we find out is there are a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, if you're in human form, you are considered human. If you're not in human form, you're not considered human. And that is where the law is at this particular moment. In the past, we have had completely some states reject the fact that Lupi could even be legal, that you were not legally allowed to be a lupus, which I don't know how they were going to stop people from, being born the way they were born, but you just could not tell anybody. No one could find out. You could be locked in jail or killed or whatever if you were found in certain states to be a lupus. In other states like California, where we are in right now, that was never the case. They were always, I don't want to say pro-lupus, but they were at least like, you're legally can be a lupus. It doesn't mean that, we have laws to protect you, but we're not going to kill you just for being you. Like, that's fine. You don't have to leave the state or be worried for your life for just being a lupus versus other states. Now we know that federally, everybody is legal, can be legally not human, and you can't just kill or lock people up for not being human. They still don't have the best laws about that, as we can see and as we've talked about already, but at least nobody in the states has the right to just kill you or anything like that. There is still the prejudice, though, that comes with the whole thing, where, like, at first you weren't even legal, now you're being forced to be legal. These states are forced to make you legal, And the people who live in those areas obviously are going to be really prejudiced against that if they had already voted or wanted them to not be part of their community. Obviously, we already are seeing in California that there's still prejudice, even though it was always legal to be a lupus or a lupi, part of the lupi community. But at this point, there are still a lot of prejudiced people in that area as well, and we've already seen some of them. We did find out in the past that there were required, the lupi were required to become registered. So even though it was legal, you did have to become registered, and they did make a shot that would make it so you could not change into your werewolf form. So they tried to force the lupi to become human in many aspects, and they were like, we're going to give you a shot that will, every so often, that will make it so you cannot change. And that's how we're going to solve this problem, is that you're basically going to have to become what everybody else is, and that's human. They have gone away with this. We can tell now that they have gone away with this, and they have found, they have mentioned something about the shots not being 100% safe, and so they ended up stopping it. But Rule, we do know, she mentions that he has that number on his neck that was tattooed there that shows that he was registered at one point. So he had to go through the shots and the inability to change. We don't know if that's going to come up very soon or not, with how he felt about that or how that affected him in any way, shape, or form. But it is interesting to note, and we will see if that does progress into something more. And, you know, I've already kind of talked about the differences between past and now, but I'll go ahead and go over really quick now what it seems to be clear, so that way we have it all listed out in case I did forget anything. So, all states legal to be lupus now. Only legal rights to pertain to the human form, though. So, can be killed without any provocation if you are wandering around in your wolf form and other people are around. You can attack in wolf form only for self-defense. If there's any other reason, then you are guilty of attacking somebody and will be more harshly gone against. I know that's not really what I'm trying to say, but for some reason it's escaping me at the moment. It'll be a harsher punishment, there we go, if you are in your wolf form attacking people. No longer need to be registered or to have the shots. Lupi are considered citizens of a sort. And we know, the only thing that we know that's not werewolf related is that gnomes can't own property. So we do know that gnomes are a thing. But we don't know, we don't know like a lot about them, but we do know that they can't own property because of this, what Lily informs us of that when she meets the club owner for Club Hell. And obviously he is a gnome in hiding, since somehow he has been able to buy this club and to own it. Public views we've already kind of talked about a little bit, but let's go ahead and just go over them really quick again. I've already kind of intermixed all of these things together that I had sectioned out to properly talk about. So let's go ahead and just list it, make sure that we have it covered and that we are all on the same page. There's still a lot of prejudice, as we've talked about. Instead of, having racial, problems at this point. We don't know about racial problems still. That could still very be a big thing. But a lot of racial problems that we have had in our world, we are seeing similar things happening with the prejudice against non-human people. So the Lupi are very much have prejudice against them. We see that just from some of the cops. We see that from just Lily interacting with other people and knowing that there is going to be a lot of strife with this particular case and the fact that it was from a lupus in wolf form. So we still know that there's a lot of problems going on with trying to intermix the paranormal and the regular human society. Politically correct terms have now come across. I'm trying to use them myself. I'm used to calling werewolves werewolves, but the politically correct statement now in this story is to be a lupus or lupi, not to mention them as werewolf or werewolves. So that's very interesting, I think, that there is now a politically correct term that is not to be insulting. Though it is interesting that Lily occasionally does use the term werewolf in her thoughts, occasionally out loud. So we're gonna see how that kind of stuff plays out with that. But it does seem like, there is the steps toward trying to be an integrated society with that. And the Lupi are very, very concerned with their public image. We talk about how sometimes they settle problems themselves because they don't want it to be out in the open of how bad things could be with the Lupi. They want it to be very public friendly view. They want them to be seen as not monsters but as humans who can control, their wolf side, which it doesn't seem like we've gotten any explanation or any proof that they can't, but they definitely want to make sure that everybody thinks well of them because their lives are a lot less protected than anybody else's at this point. So it does make sense that they would want to keep their image squeaky clean in the hopes of not being persecuted more. Any thoughts or feelings or anything else that you can think of that you'd like to mention on the fact of the world building on the more political, more side of how society is interacting with the paranormal? Go ahead and let me know down below. I would love to hear your thoughts and feelings about this, as well as if you think I missed anything or was wrong about anything. I would be happy to have a conversation with you. And let's go ahead and talk about the werewolves, because or the Lupi, and how they work, how they are portrayed, and such like that in this particular series. So we have covered the first 3 books so far of the Mercy Thompson series, which covers a different look at werewolves. And then we have this version of werewolves in this particular version of Earth. So we get some sense of some of the terminology that the Lupi community uses. And I really like how a lot of the things, or the way that Wilks introduces a lot of these world building aspects and a lot of these terms and things like that is through using them and not through telling us. So, Rule uses these terms, or she finds out something, or somebody says something, or she already knows something for Lily, and uses it. And then we can gain what it means from the context, instead of it being like, oh yes, this is how the Lupi society works as far as I know, and explaining everything away. Instead, it is very much we are just in the middle of things, we are going through, and there's a lot of showing versus telling on the narrator's part. And we just have to kind of be smart enough to pay attention and follow along and learn as we go. So the terminology is, we've got Lununcio, which is Rule, which is our second in command. Since Rule is the prince or the second in command, we can guess that him calling himself the Lununcio, meaning some kind of term for second in command. We've got Ro, which is Rule's dad, which we can infer then that a Ro is the leader of the clan, and that is kind of obvious based on how he has to talk to his dad and update him on what's happening and all the stuff that we've mentioned on that through that phone call. It's very clear that him calling him the Ro means obviously he is the person in command of the clan. So Ro, Lununcio, and then we have clan home, which is pretty obvious in the fact of it's kind of stating itself, is that they live in clans, and clan home must be where the clan lives, and that is where their home is. So we do have a couple of those terms that the werewolf / Lupi use in their society, and we now have that knowledge for us. I think it's very interesting that they do have those classifications and those particular terms that they use. And I think that it's very interesting. I haven't seen tons of urban fantasies that really give unique titles to the different stations. Usually it's more of like a generic type labeling. So I do like that. They are very fast compared to humans. They're not, extravagantly fast. They're not like Lily said to her grandmother, 100 mile per hour or whatever. They're not a cheetah, but they are very, very fast, especially compared to a human. They're very strong, especially compared to a human. We don't know exactly what their strength amounts to. We don't know exactly how much stronger they are, but we do know that they are very strong. We do know that they are only males, never female. We don't really know what happens with the females, but we do know that you cannot be a female lupus, ever. We don't know why that is at this point. We don't know if there is like a reason, if they can actually be born or not, but it makes it sound like they might not even be able to exist, but we don't know enough about that yet. All we know is that Lupi are male 100% of the time. 100% of the time. They even make a comment that they can take several bullets without going down. You have to use very specific special bullets in order to hurt a Lupi or a lupus. So they did mention something about silver bullets with her, the captain, so I am guessing that silver does affect them. But regular bullets, for sure, you plug a couple in them and they're still going to be going. So obviously they are built very, very strong in the fact that they can't be taken out very easily with a gun in, it seems, either form, human or wolf. Always in clans. We get this from this conversation that Rule has with his dad. He makes these comments by saying that you always are in a clan, and those that don't have a clan or are rogue are, insane, that they are not safe, they are not good, they are not part of the community, and so every lupus should be in a clan. Though we also understand that Cullen is an exception at this point. And we know that they are very claustrophobic, which in many ways makes sense because of their animal nature. When you lock up animals, sometimes they can be react very badly to that. So locking one up in jail would not be a good thing. We don't know exactly what would happen, but we do understand that they are claustrophobic and that locking them up in any way, shape, or form does not bode well. So there we go. We have, like I said, a whole lot of world building that happens in the space of these first 5 chapters, and I'm sure we will have more continue to go through as we continue forward with the story. So we're going to see what more we learn. Obviously there's a lot more of the werewolf culture that we don't know about at this point. We just know some of their aspects, and Lily's trying to find out more about them, and Rule said that he's going to help her find out more about them, so and kind of let her know more about their society and stuff like that to help with their investigation. So we will obviously be learning more as we continue forward. Okay, so those are all my main things that I wanted to talk about. Yes, most of it was world building. We did talk a little bit about the couple of main characters that we have at the forefront of this story. Let me know if there was anything that you feel like was pretty big that I missed and you'd like to have a conversation about. I would love to hear your response and see if I can kind of incorporate that in for you, and or have a one-on-one discussion with you, or a discussion with everybody. Hopefully we can all get involved on learning together. Let me know down below if there's anything that you wanted me to talk about. And let's go ahead and wrap things up with the nitty gritty. I do have quite a few nitty gritty points for keeping in mind as we continue reading. So let's go ahead and go over those real quick. So we do know for certain now that werewolves don't have lust powers, according to Grandmother. So the question is, what is happening between Rule and Lily? Lily is not the kind of person who would just be, infatuated with a guy because he's good looking. We can already tell that from the personality that she has already been given so far. And yet, there's been several instances on both their parts where it seems like there is heavy attraction that cannot be denied and cannot be normal. And she's wondering if it's a lust powers or not. But we do know for certain now, according to grandmother, that there's no way that there is lust powers that they have. They just tend to be good looking and charismatic. So what does that mean is happening between Rule and Lily? We will see how that progresses as we go forward and if it means anything or not. Cullen is said to be a sorcerer. We have that moment where he is said to be a sorcerer. And then we also have this other comment by the chief saying that they are extinct. So, two conflicting sentiments there. Cullen also seems to be a werewolf, and that is a uniqueness at that. And we have that comment we're saying from Rule's conversation with his dad that something is kind of weird with Cullen because he shouldn't be who he is. We don't really know much yet. It's just been sprinkled in there. So let's go ahead and keep in mind about Cullen seems to be a weird person at this point. He also is said to be clanless, and then they say that clanless is to be insane. So we're not really sure what's happening with him, but we do know something is different about Cullen, and we will hopefully learn more about that as we progress. We have had several mentions now of Ginger Harris, and there is something that happened with Ginger that we don't know about and is causing problems for Lily. It's obviously something that's very important, something that's deeply affected her, and the fact that she keeps talking about it, and her mom also has kind of a freak out about her discussing it. So what event happened? We don't know. It's very interesting. Ginger used to also give her nightmares. That's not normal. So, but it doesn't also seem like Ginger was like overly mean to her, so it didn't seem like maybe like it was bullying or anything like that at this point to me. Maybe you guys feel differently. It's very interesting. It's a very weird thing going on with Ginger Harris, and we're gonna see if we find out what that is, because we've had just little passing of mentions, and then before we actually get to hear what it's about, somebody cuts something off. Lily cuts off her train of thought, whatever. As we mentioned before, grandmother is magical somehow, so we will hopefully see how she is magical, what that means. Is she like Lily? Is she not? That'll be interesting to find out about. And the last nitty gritty that I want to keep in mind is that we have mention of an old one from, I believe it was Rule who mentioned it. But we don't know what an old one is. And I think that that's going to be interesting, because that seemed to be something he really stressed upon, was that title, an old one. Alright, that is what I had for my nitty gritty. And that is everything for today. Please let me know down below if there was anything, like I said, that I missed that you wanted to talk about, that you feel like is really important. If you just want to talk about it in a more casual manner, anything at all, anything you want to say, you can go ahead and leave a comment down below. Or you are welcome to contact me at Twitter, which is at fantasyfiction1. You're also welcome to contact me or get a hold of me through Facebook, which is /fantasyfiction1. You can either contact me also on my contact page on my website, which is fantasyfictionfanatics.net. Also, if you head over there, you can go ahead and see all the other content that I post on there on my blog. I've got book reviews, book suggestions, talking about more in-depth singular things of fantasy nature, things that I think about, personal discussions about me and my personal interaction with fantasy. All kinds of things are all over on the website. So if you want more content from me, go ahead and check that out as well. You're welcome to let me know if you have any kind of content that you would like to see on there or on this channel. Go ahead and let me know. I'd be happy to do it for you. Also, you can sign up for my newsletter if you want to get updates about things for me or for the channel, that kind of stuff. Also, if you would like to join the Discord, I would be so happy if you would join our community. We do have several people already over there discussing fantasy, different kinds of things, and hopefully you will want to join in. The link will be in the description box below, so that way you can join our server and chat with everybody else if that is something that interests you. I'm also on there, so you can reach me on there as well. I'd be happy to discuss all things fantasy, all things anything, because we are talking about all kinds of things over there. But just if you want a community with people who like fantasy like you do and want to have a conversation with them, we would all love to have you over there. One last reminder to don't forget the trivia question if you want to join. That is also over at the website. Go ahead and answer the question, and I announce the people who got it right on the website after the end of the week on the next week's class and on the Discord. So check back any of those places if you want to find out if you got the answer correct or not, and if you got it wrong, what the real answer was. Alright, I think that is all for today. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I hope that you are enjoying the beginning of our new series, World of the Lupi. And for the next class, go ahead and read chapters 6 through 10, which for me on my digital version is pages 56 through 101. And hopefully you will continue to enjoy it. I'll see you guys in the next class. Bye!